The Dr. David Clark.
Mr. Chair, in some ways I'm actually picking up where my colleague left off, because it is in the changes, and I too sat on the Select Committee and heard the similar arguments from the local councils that they did not wish to take that responsibility over. And I want to pick up some of the comments the Minister made in his contribution before the dinner break, when he contended that these changes in the Act and in his SOP were about reducing the shambles that the legislation currently is. He also contended that the bill was about giving more choice. Those were the two phrases the Minister used, and then tried to back them up using examples out of the bill, although he was a little light on the examples, I have to say. And I want to say, right back to the Minister and put into the debate, that in fact it doesn't achieve those purposes. And so the changes that he's proposing in his SOP, for example, to Part 2, Subpart 1, replacing regulation with the Easter shock trading policies that is his proposal to kind of change the nature of what local councils might do, is, as my colleague has said, not achieving a choice, an active choice. The councils still did not want that as a change. They said, we do not want that responsibility, whether it comes in the form of regulation or policies, it makes no difference. So it's not actually clarifying that or making it easier for those local councils, as the Minister has said. And so I would be interested in his response to what those local councils said, which wasn't something that he addressed in the contribution that I heard. It was something that he skirted around. But if he is going to make those contentions in this House and in this debate, then I feel that the Minister does need to back up that assertion that this will reduce the burden somehow, or make it clearer for councils, and somehow appease them and the wishes that they had expressed in that Select Committee. On the issue of choice, the Minister talked a lot about choice and about this bill giving choice. I want to contend that actually it reduces choice for workers, because what we know will happen as a result of these changes is that more pressure will go on people, particularly those who are most vulnerable, and many in the retail sector are on low incomes, barely meeting their bills. It's those people that I will contend have less choice. They will feel the pressure to turn up when they're asked. There are some clauses in here in the bill that talk about personal grievances and so on, which really assume a level of access to legal advice, that assume a level of confidence and competence in those people that doesn't necessarily reflect the reality of every vulnerable person in the workplace. And I think so. What in fact will result from all of this is that choice will be taken away from those people. Those people have the option currently of knowing that at some points, and more than an option, they know that they will have time with their families and time for rest and relaxation and recreation in those times when shops are currently not permitted to trade. That choice will be taken away from them. So in fact, what is happening is that choice is being taken away from those who most need it. And thus, the bill is not achieving the purpose the Minister asserts. When he says it's increasing choice, it's in fact removing choice from those who already have the fewest choices in our society. So that's the crux of what I'm going to say, and that flows through to all of the matters, or many of the matters in the Minister's SOP. So if we look at clause 13, that's exactly where it's enacted, where you're replacing the need for a bylaw with a requirement for a shop trading policy. And as I've suggested, the local councils don't really see a significant difference between the two. They still see the burden put on them for decision making, for running processes, and for making the same kinds of decisions as they would be making effectively with a bylaw. So when the Minister wants to assert that somehow makes it clearer or simpler, it's simply not true in my view. The Minister then further in asserting that it makes things simpler, doesn't speak about, for example, the lot of tourists who arrive in this country who might want to exercise their consumer rights in the retail sector through the country. When they travel through the country, they're going to find not a reduced number of exemptions to the overall policy, but a more mixed response to this legislation, because it very much leaves it up to the local councils. So every place in the country may have a different take on this, where currently there are only 1 or 2 exemptions, and tourists, I suggest, would expect that places were not open generally, Mr Chair.
Dr. David Clark.
Unless you know, they just wouldn't expect them to be open unless they knew of the 2 obvious examples, which are 2 main tourist centres. So far from making things simpler, the Minister is in fact increasing things. He talked about it being a shambles, and as I will assert, it's actually more of a shambles. The Minister himself, interestingly, said the bill was very far from a gold standard, which I thought was a very frank admission on a day when we've also reflecting on this luggage bill. I don't want to say too much about that, but what are we doing in this House if the Minister's bringing a bill to the House, which he is not behind, which he thinks is not the correct solution or is far from a gold standard, where we're debating general bills, and that suggests to me that the appropriate way forward for this would be for the Minister to hold this bill over, for him to work further with local councils, see if he can't resolve the conflict that's been brought to the House, and actually work with them to look at whether there is another way of doing this, because they're not happy with what he's putting forward in his SOP. That's what we've heard directly as a committee. They don't want the responsibility for making this decision. They feel that is a decision for central government to make, so that policies can be consistent across New Zealand, so they don't have to put more resource into making decisions at a local level that can be contested, that they're not funded extra for, and I can understand that. And I think members of this House could understand that, because all of us have connection with local council at various times and understand the burden that is put on them without funding frequently from central government. So, Mr Speaker, in concluding, I wish to oppose many of the clauses that the Minister has in his SOP. I really don't think that they achieve his stated purpose of making things simpler, of getting rid of the shambles he describes, and I do see some irony in the fact that he himself is not willing to say that this is the gold standard way of fixing them. I think it's not about giving choice. This bill, the changes he's making, are actually reducing choice for those in our society who need it most.
A point of order, Jamie Lee Ross.
Mr Chair, I seek leave for all questions in this debate to be taken as one debate, but all questions voted on separately, and for the committee to conclude the debate on this at 9:15.
I just want to interpret to the House that I am assuming with the debate concluding at 9:15, it will be effectively a closure, and we will move to all votes, which will be concluded before the committee rises tonight. Is there any objection to that process? There appears to be none. Right, so the question now is that parts 1 and 2, the schedule and clauses 1 to 3 stand part.